Hey guys, what's up? Thanks for coming to the Bitcoin in the Bible small group. I hope that this group gives you a lot, not just of information about Bitcoin, but can grow your faith, can bring you closer to Christ, and ultimately allow you to give back to the church in a way that maybe you never have before. First thing I'd like to do before we get started talking about anything Bitcoin related is go through kind of some ground rules of what we'll be talking about in the group and what you can expect. First and foremost, we put Christ first. Because we have all sinned, we will all make mistakes. By putting Christ first, we eliminate the complaints that arise when we do not get what we want from the things around us. Number two, this is a Bitcoin-only group. This is about changing the monetary system from one predicated on theft to one that has a foundation on truth. This is not about making dollars or having passive income or any investment advice. This is about a new system of communication and money for our benefit and, most importantly, His glory. Number three, no time preferences. If we truly believe that God's purpose is greater than our preference, then the only thing that matters is our actions today. We cannot control or prefer the outcome of tomorrow. Through this small group, we will be talking about the Bitcoin in the Bible podcast. So one of the requirements that comes from being in this group is listening to the podcast. And each week we will cover a whole bunch of topics. But to get the most out of this group, the one requirement is that you listen to the podcast. Because even though you might not get everything out of this little window that we have today, I hope that God can use that podcast to speak to you in different ways. You could maybe screen record it or whatever you'd like to do to keep those elements for yourself. And that's what this entire class is based off of. So what to expect? Each week I'll provide a summary of what the coming episodes will talk about. We'll have time for some open discussion and questions in the beginning. Today we're going over just the ground rules for that section, but most of the time we will have some questions and time to encourage each other with our financial dealings in order to help the group together move towards the ultimate goal, which is the ultimate goal for the group, which is to personally or as a group collectively provide a tithe and offering directly with this new form of money, Bitcoin. If you're new to tithing, this is not a group that's going to force you to tithe or make you start tithing in any way or tithe to this church specifically. More so, this group should begin to lay the foundation for you to learn about what God says about money. And through that, I hope you find the benefits of tithing. What not to expect. We will not be discussing crypto. There's a clear distinction between Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and we'll get into that. But know from the beginning that this group is about drawing closer to God in our finances and becoming a blessing to others in our church. To start off, you do have a pamphlet here and the resources and also handed out to you that talk about Bitcoin. This is the actual paper that I wrote for my church to help them start their Bitcoin journey. And it's highly technical. It's also very conversational and has a lot of elements that we will talk about through the course of the coming weeks. The main premise of having this paper is to have a reflection point. If there's a topic you want to learn more on, there's a lot of keywords and really vocabulary that you can learn through reading through this, but also you might hear something in the talks that is a little bit confusing. And my goal with the handout, the larger paper, is that you would have a reference point to be able to jump back to and say, oh yeah, what is that he talked about? Let me go search that and see what he said to his church to help them in that piece as well. All right. So first and foremost, I want to make sure that you know that it is never too late to turn away from your sin. It's never too late to repent, or it's never too late to change your actions. And One of the things that is so powerful with this group is that you chose to come here. You chose to listen to this. And because of that, you are taking a step and moving in the direction that allows you to learn something new. In the same way that we would have taken a first step to come to church, we can take a first step towards what God says about our money. And thank you for doing that. It's never an easy decision. This course can be found as difficult because money can be a very difficult discussion, especially in the church, especially about giving money. But whenever it's centered around a lot of our life, it becomes something that is almost ingrained into us. But that's why it's so challenging, is to disassociate from this idea of the money we've been taught in school or the money that we've been taught by other leaders, to really listen to what God says about money and what God says about Jesus. Because we're here to, again, first and foremost, make Christ the center point of our life, and to start to build our life off of that foundation rather than going through our daily life building off of the foundation of money. Take action, right? We talked about that. You've done that. And in this course, we will learn about how God views money, and in turn, how we should use Bitcoin in this broken system with a godly perspective. By the end of the curriculum, you will have the ability to make a choice on how you'd like to proceed. Through the lessons, you may begin to see parallels between faith and finance, and this is expected. Money is a highly talked about topic in the Bible, but it doesn't mean that we should compare these parallels by attempting to make money higher than our faith. Our faith is in Christ, and that is the most important thing. If you get nothing out of this entire 6 weeks, Christ is at the center point of our life, and we are building that foundation from what He says. Just as Christ, though, gives us a free and open opportunity to choose our own path in life, you may learn about this new money and not have any response to it. And you might take that opportunity when you're ready. But a lot of people ask, when I first got into Bitcoin, they would ask, am I too late? And the answer to that is no. You're never too late to change your actions towards what God says about money. The Bible underscores a very important topic about the prudence of money management. It talks about committing your money to the things of God, to the right things in life, and not using our money for evil. Proverbs 16:3 says, "Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans." So again, that time preference thing, step 3, or number 3 that we talked about on our ground rules, is no time preferences. God is going to establish our plan. And by using the right tools, we will be able to navigate towards what God says to us by committing what we need to do with Him. Also, our word for the year at the church is commit. And so I kind of want to double down on this right here with Psalms 37:5, which says, "Commit to the Lord whatever you do." Commit everything you do to the Lord. Trust Him, and He will help you. And I just love that. I love that it says trust Him. This is a very distinct parallel that you could start to draw, which is, are we placing our trust in Bitcoin? And no, we're not placing any trust in Bitcoin. We are placing our trust in Christ. And by using a money that is centered around an idea that exemplifies what Christ has done, then we can begin to see Him work through it. As individuals, we are taught to handle our finances with integrity and align with biblical teachings on honesty and fairness. In Proverbs 16:11, it says, "Honest scales and balances belong to the Lord, and all the weights in the bag are of His making." That's really important as we start to learn about money and what God says about it, because Jesus specifically was sold for money. When Judas gave Jesus to the Romans and ultimately turned him in for sacrifice, they used silver. And I brought with me today 10 troy ounces of silver. And if you've never held the weight of silver versus the weight of quarters or nickels or pennies, you would miss this clear distinction that it talks about in Proverbs 16:11, which is that, again, all the weights in the bag are of his making. So I think that's really wild that God made the money that he was going to be sold for. And as we step through this understanding of money, we start to unravel it a little bit in our mind. Well, wait, silver was money at one point, and now we're talking about Bitcoin as this, new money, and we'll get there. It takes a long process, but through episode 1 of the podcast, you will get this understanding that just as it says in Proverbs 23:23, it says, "Buy truth and do not sell it. Buy wisdom, knowledge, and understanding." And we can seem confused about how we once had silver and now we have dollars, and I'm trying to teach you now about Bitcoin. But if we don't have that clear distinction and that wisdom of how we got here, we will miss a key element of why we need to be here. Not just here as in terms of money, but why we're here on earth and what God's plan is for our life. That's ultimately episode 1 of the podcast. And moving through into episode 2, it starts to explore options of honesty, transparency, fairness, and ethical principles. You can, because God has given you money, you have a choice in the best way to use it. You can use it for his purposes, or you can use it, as Judas did, for evil. Money is the most universal way that we communicate as individuals. It's the most fundamental way. You can say to someone, "I love you and I care about you," but nothing says that more than giving them $20 on their birthday, having them open it up. You know the feeling when you open up a card and there's nothing in there, except for some words. That communication from the words can mean something, but when you see the money, it invokes a different feeling. And it's because it's communicating to you. And once you learn about money and how it's to be used with a godly perspective, we have a moral obligation. Us as Christians, we have this obligation to not just use the system that we've been given, but to promote a system that supports the values that he has set for us, that he has set in the Bible. We have ultimately taken the power of money, of that communication, and we have given that to other people. Back to the concept of silver. We have 1 troy ounce of silver that has value, it has weight. And when the United States was being formed, we also used silver. These are silver dollars. And these silver dollars had the same weight as another silver dollar. These were dollars at one point. Now these are worth about $32. So the value of them has changed. The amount of something that this buys you has changed. And that means that it didn't change because of something that you or I did. The value of these didn't change because they're any different. They changed because we gave them a new way of communicating. Paper money. We've taken what was something of finite supply, something that is scarce and hard to get out of the ground, that weighs a substantial amount, and we've given it to this. And when we've done that, we have given up our freedom to use another money. We trust in this, and we accept this to each other and from each other for goods and services. Because we've done that, because that exchange rate is no longer the same between $1 of paper and $1 of silver, we have essentially put ourselves into a debt-based system. We have allowed ourselves to make 32 of these and have it only be one of these. And we can continue to print as many of these as we want. So even though the number of silver coins or the number of silver that's coming out of the ground changes over time, this changes much faster and is printed much quicker. Not just with paper, but now with electronic debt. We have given over the power of financialization of our life. We've taken the power of what money can do out of God's hands, and we've given that to governments. In this picture I have up here, which I'll put on the screen, I wanted to highlight the fact that taxation is theft. And when you would have a certain amount of silver, let's say that this 10 pieces of silver is my life savings, and a government comes in and says, you need to give me some of that because you live here. I'm required to do so. And when I give this up, it's hard for me to get it back. It's silver. It's not the same as dollars. Because when they can print these infinitely, why would they need to tax it if they make it infinitely? The United States was founded on the ideas of no taxation without representation. Yet today, we have given all of the power of money to the people who print it. And that idea can be summarized by Mark 4, 11 and 12. He said to them, "To those who have, more will be given. They will have an abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken." This highlights a huge, huge point in our financial system, which is that they have confused and manipulated what the value of money actually is. When you can hold up a dollar, it says $1 on it. Right here, it says $1. And I hold up $1, it says it right on there, $1. And I know in my brain that they're not the same. But yet, I can't use this money to pay my taxes. I have to use the printed money. You can begin to see what this verse is highlighting, is that those who have nothing, who have given up their power, have given up the money, the ability to use the money and what God can do with the money, they've given it up to governments, will have nothing left. And because they have all the silver, they have all the gold, they have all the assets. The government, if they're printing, let's say 10 or 20% of the entire money supply every year, the money that you have is appreciating at the same rate. So your house would go up by 10% or go up by 20%, but that doesn't mean your house is worth any more money. By placing our money into the things like the stock market, what we're doing is we're communicating with our money that we trust the outcome of another company's profits to outperform that rate of money printing, that 10 or 20% that they're printing every year. We're essentially placing our trust, instead of governments, into companies. And in dollar terms, it looks like, I said, the house value or the stock market value is going up. But they tax that too, which is more theft. In the housing market in dollar terms, you can see things going up exponentially. Houses are 3 times as much as they were just 10 years ago. Yet in the 2008 housing bubble, we saw that governments are willing to come in and print money to keep the price of those houses inflated and to bail out the big banks that were buying those houses with money that they were printing through loan creation. And in turn, these companies like banks and these governments are okay with stealing the wealth of everyone else to finance the evil doing that they were doing with the money. Some older folks might see this as like an opportunity to buy a cheap house. However, this distribution of wealth becomes scarce. It's unable to be, look at my generation or even a generation younger than me, they're unable to afford a home. They're forced into renting, which pushes them into rent seeking and finding the cheapest home they can, which might not be very suitable for their family or even long term. Proverbs 22:7 says that the rich rule over the poor and the borrower is a slave to the lender. So what is the solution, right? What makes this money hard or harder? Well, there are 6 key elements that make a money or usable. It's portability, durability, divisibility, unit of account, which is whether or not you can count it. Its store of value, whether or not it stores its value long term, or its scarcity, and its scarcity. We know this based on Aristotle. We've known this for hundreds and hundreds of years, that those elements make up a good money, and that if something doesn't have those features, or those features, then it is what's considered a weaker money. Potatoes would not be a good money. They can't hold their value into the future because they'll rot. Gold makes for a very hard money because it's extremely scarce, but yet its portability is extremely hard. You have to secure it. You have to transport it. It's very heavy. Silver, too. But Keynesian economics promotes the idea that money printing is what creates economic growth or stimulates an economy. This logic is very flawed because the money that they're saying is going to stimulate an economy is the exact same mechanism and money that leads to it being printed to infinity and beyond, and also steals the wealth from everyone. Like a farmer from 1910 could buy a whole farm for $100 because each dollar was exchanged for the exact same amount of silver. When they introduced paper money, it's why we have paper dollars, is this is easier to transport than this. And if you had 100 of these coins, 100 silver dollars, in 1910, you'd be able to buy a farm, $100. $100, not $100, $100. You can clearly start to make this distinction. But you go out today, and this $100 doesn't even buy you a fancy dinner. This is because our money has been detached from reality. We have had the wool pulled over our eyes into us believing that we're still using and operating under the same rules that previous generations were. And because of that, we have all made the wrong decisions because we are walking around blind. We don't know the true value of money. We cannot place our time preference over God's purpose. And if this is just about investing and making more dollars, we're losing the point entirely. Think of things that you're holding on to today that you hope will go up in value one day. Could be an old car, maybe your home. Maybe you do have some silver and you're hoping the price goes up. Maybe you're holding Bitcoin and you hope the price goes up. We cannot place our time preference over God's purpose for our life. And this is the foundation that we can build on. When we save in a money that's being actively stolen from us, you can't help but think of yourself. You can't help but think of two family incomes because you don't have enough. You assume that a money is constant. And we just learned that $100 is not $100. So it's not constant. The dollar is like a rubber ruler. If I had a ruler that was rubber, let's think of a yardstick. If we assume money is a constant, we know that the dollar, though, is a rubber band, right? And that my neighbors bought a house they're 85 years old. They bought their house for $17,000. Today it's valued at $250,000. It's the same wood, it's the same nails, but the only thing that changed is that they took that dollar and stretched it, and now it's worth more. Yeah. So what are the other options, right? We've gone through a couple of them. The one that most people think of is real estate. And in 2020, the government actually told people they were not allowed to evict anyone. I don't know if you remember that or not. It was in COVID. They told all the homeowners that they're not allowed to evict anyone. Really? So if you had a crackhead, if you had a crackhead in your place, and you couldn't evict them. Yeah. And also, this idea that you own your home and you own it, free and clear is not true because of property taxes, right? So even the land it sits on is not yours.
My mom pays like $4,000 a year in property taxes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Bonds are the same thing. Yeah. They're the exact same thing, where you are essentially lending your money to the government for a dividend that they're printing, and they're stretching that dollar when they're printing it. So you are actively knowing that you're buying something that's going to be stretched. Yeah. Stock market, we've talked about, is that we're putting our faith into the future profits of a company. And by doing that, we're not putting it in the hands of God. And gold, even though it's been money for 5,000 years, it has been debased. It has been separated from the gold standard. President Nixon killed that in 1971. And it's essentially got us stuck in this debt-based derivative, right? So is Bitcoin money, right? We're going to try and make that next step here to Bitcoin. Well, technically everything could be money, right? I think the better question here is, does it have value? And what would give it value? We talked about those 6 things: scarcity, divisibility, durability. And I want to walk through each one of those and talk about Bitcoin's elements as it relates to it. So, scarcity. There's only 21 million Bitcoin. That's all that there will ever be. And we can verify that, me and you. We could do that by the time we're done with the whole episode, or the whole series. Durability. It's backed by energy and the internet. So the internet's something that I've had only in my lifetime. My parents didn't have it. And I couldn't see a world without it now.
Yeah.
Okay? So by using a money that uses the internet, I'm supporting the internet going into future generations.
Okay.
Same with energy. I couldn't think about not having a refrigerator.
Yeah.
So by using Bitcoin, I'm supporting a money that is built by energy,
Okay.
and I'm supporting the use of energy, right?
Yeah.
Divisibility. One Bitcoin, even though it's extremely expensive, can be divided into 100 million what are called sats. And that divisibility allows us to transact with it, buy a cup of coffee, stick of gum, whatever it might be, so that we can still have parts of a whole unit, but in the same way that we would split $1 into 100 pennies, a Bitcoin splits into 100 million Satoshi. And so more people can have access to it. Unit of account. One Bitcoin will always equal one Bitcoin. And that unit of account allows us to not just have that as a basis for how we transact, right?
Yeah.
But it allows us to base that off of 21 million, which is the scarcity element coming back all over again.
Yeah.
Store value is that it's deflationary by nature, meaning it doesn't inflate like the dollar. Nobody can print more than 21 million Bitcoin. And it's deflation, right, that drives it. So do we want our money to go further and buy us more things, or do we want our things to cost us more money, right? We have to flip that idea. Deflation in Bitcoin allows it to do that. And portability, it's internet movable.
Yeah.
So again, we're supporting the aspects of durability, that it's supported by the internet, can't use it without the internet, and that's how we move it, is by using the internet.
Okay.
That's really episode 2 that they go through. And so we'll kind of jump into episode 3, which talks about a lot more of the technical details. Feel free to stop me at any of the points you want to here to talk through this. But buying Bitcoin is not needed in order to find freedom in Christ. A lot of people will say that Bitcoin is freedom technology because you do not need anyone's permission to use it. And I would say that's also the same with praying, right? It's a freedom gift because we don't need anyone's permission to pray. And we live in a country where we can say that. Some countries, that's not the case.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin in this way, right, even though they have to be, they have to hide their, religious nature in their country, they don't necessarily have to hide with Bitcoin because it's free to use, and no one can stop it. The main thing to take away from this part of the talk is that you start to understand the reasons why choosing your path is always your path, right? Even though we have that freedom to choose Christ, or freedom to choose cash, or freedom to choose, a different religion, or freedom to use Bitcoin, once we're educated on these topics, we can take full ownership of why we've chosen those different things. Until we know what we're doing, we can't really take that ownership. And so I'm really glad that you're learning about it, because it ultimately will become the outcome that's based on reality. We talked about how the reality of this is detached, right? That this is no longer interchangeable. And so knowing that we can come back to a reality that's in our domain, that's actually grounded on fundamentals, it's really important. And that's the same with the Bible. We have a place that we can go to have that foundation of truth, right? We can start, if we're not careful, what we can do is start to show favoritism towards money or towards sin, where it doesn't feel so bad, so I'll just do that, swiping the credit card, or, oh, it doesn't feel so bad, I'll pull up that website, or whatever. You start to desensitize yourself and play favorites with one way or another. But we know that dollars steal from people. We know what website we're going to, right? So these type of things can start to become correlated in our minds so that we see what we're doing. And we can take that ownership, right? And start to play. We can start to use money the way that God intended. How money starts naturally. In episode 3, I highly encourage you to go and listen to that one, because there's a great story that gets told about people creating a money they become shipwrecked on an island, and they need to create a form of money. And the way they do that is by going out and getting seashells. So they go out and they get seashells, they come back for the day, and that work that's done to go and get those seashells is recorded on a list. John did this much work, Susie did this much work, and has this many seashells to show for it. The problem with one centralized ledger is that it could be erased and cheated, right? Someone could just change it, and then whenever Susie comes back from working that day, it's, well, John didn't get that many. I didn't send that many to him. If they're interchanging them like a money would be, right? That ledger can be changed.
Okay.
So the idea they present in this, new form of money they come up with is to take that ledger and split it up. So now I have a copy, you have a copy, Jim has a copy, and we can all check and verify that that the money I sent you is the same one that's recorded on your ledger, it's the same one that's recorded on his ledger, and I can check to make sure and verify all of that. You can think about it like an audit.
Are you saying so Bitcoin has more transparency?
More transparency, exactly, yeah. That there is more freedom in that aspect of, I can see the transactions as they come in. I can, verify that no one is spending more than they have and trying to cheat the system. And because it's distributed now, I can very easily just, compare it to others to do an audit. And you can't audit the government. I don't know if you know that or not, but you literally cannot. So no one really could. Elon's trying to. It's going to be insanely hard. But that's essentially, that centralized ledger is what we talked about, of how people can just change it and manipulate it. When we decentralize that network, right, of ledgers, we can then get more trust between parties. And that is, I think that's what God calls us to, is to be trustworthy with each other and trustworthy in our financial dealings. And so by using this type of money, I can verify that someone else is being trustworthy. The way we do this is by what's called running a node. A node is essentially a little Altoid sized computer that you don't need a supercomputer to do this. It's not very expensive to download that entire copy of the ledger since its inception, from when it was created to now, and you can verify every single time it was sent or received, all the way back to the beginning, and make sure that no one has cheated the Bitcoin network. A big topic in there is don't trust, verify. That's one of the kind of highlights of the network, is that you don't have to trust anyone. You can verify with everyone that I have a true, legitimate copy. And that there's no hidden inflation, or that no one's moved money they didn't have. Time is also really important in this, because if you're transacting with someone else and you very quickly want to just change something, You could do that behind my back and my node would know nothing about it and you guys just move on with your own network, you know? But the really cool part of Bitcoin is that every 10 minutes on average, there's a new what's called block. And I wanted to actually highlight the block time right now is 883,918. That's what the block time is right now. And every 10 minutes, there's a new one. And those contain all the transactions, all the history that goes on our ledgers. So by verifying that every 10 minutes, right, is a certain amount of time, these Bitcoin were transacted, and then that we have verifiability, transparency between each other, not only is it time-based, but now it's money-based as well. In order to confirm a block, the protocol or the rules that we agree on state that some work has to be done for that to take place. And that's where mining, Bitcoin mining, comes into the play. Genesis 2:15 states that the Lord God took man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work and take care of it. In order to prevent people from spamming, right, that would be doing work without working, it requires that mining capability to do that. And I have a really fun picture here to show that. Basically, if you and I ran nodes together, it would be something like this. How does Bitcoin mining work? You can think about it kind of like a genie in a bottle. Our nodes are kind of this protocol or this idea that this person's that all the nodes together is thinking of a number between 1 and 10 to the power of 22. Massive number, just a humongous number. And if you guess it, then you win 3.5 Bitcoin. And all the miners all together, all over the world say, sounds good. And so every 10 minutes, they are processing trying to find that number, and essentially they can add that to the network and be rewarded for doing so.
Okay.
So there are no computers out there that can change that ledger. Once all the work has been done collectively to find that next block, it is essentially set in stone. Every node, every ledger all around the world says the exact same thing. So if anyone comes in and tries to say, oh, well, I actually moved like 2 Bitcoin there instead of 1, and they want to try and cheat the system, someone would have to redo all of the work that took to make that one block in order to cheat it, which is impossible. So if money is a means for storing our work, right, then we should store our money in a way that cannot just be printed, that actually takes work to do. And by work, it means using electricity, which electricity requires energy. That is electricity, right? So it is in a sense the most logical form of work that you could do.
Now, okay, so now I'm getting lost.
Okay.
Because now I understand the concept of like working versus like printing. So are you saying that people that do Bitcoin, they're actually the mining part really blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm confused. Like, am I actually working using? I'm just that's kind of lost.
Yeah. So work, the proof of work that's being done here is in a sense the electricity expense. Okay, so there's an expense that goes into mining. That expense has to be paid in one way or another. Okay? And so you would pay for the expense through working. And so the Keynesian, again, going back to what Keynesian economics says, it says that we stimulate economies by printing money, which also says we stimulate economies by stealing from other people and giving it to some.
Okay.
All that Bitcoin says is, we're not going to steal from anyone. If your machine does this amount of work, you can be rewarded a certain amount of money for the work you
So
perform.
you can accumulate Bitcoin by working?
You can accumulate Bitcoin by working, yes.
And is that the mining?
Yes.
So when because I remember when you said you have been mining Bitcoin. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what's he talking about? So you were working to get Bitcoin instead of purchasing it?
I had to perform work to other people, right? To acquire Bitcoin
Okay.
so that I could buy my miner. And then I had to work for people. We work for people, we don't work for money.
Yeah.
That's a big,
So when you
big.
say work for people, you could be doing photography.
It could be doing photography, it could be cutting lawns, it could be
Okay.
it could be running errands,
So-
it could be
so
DoorDashing.
you work for that
You work,
money.
right? Yeah.
Okay, so then you did the work.
I did the work
And then you
to
got-
acquire the machine, right?
So you could get the funds to buy the machine.
So
right?
yeah, so I could
Okay.
get the machine,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And then I plug it into my outlet at home,
Okay.
and I have to pay for that expense. How am I going to pay for that? By working,
Working.
and I'm going to pay for my miner to be on
Okay.
because again the intention is to use our money in a godly way. So by using my time and my money to afford those things,
To
right?
afford a miner.
Yes,
Is it a miner machine?
a miner, a machine, same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, a computer.
So you did work to purchase a miner.
Yep.
And then you plug it. I know I sound like a caveman.
No, it's
I'm
it.
sure
You
that's the way it was when, if we showed a cell phone to a caveman. Then
Yeah.
you're like, what in the world? So you did the work. You bought the machine. You bought the miner machine. You plug it in, right?
Yeah.
And then you start working.
And that machine does work,
That machine does work. Okay.
and I work
Okay.
for the energy expense.
So yes. So I think that's where I'm getting confused.
Okay.
So when you say you work, that means now that you've got the machine, now you're going to do more work to run that machine,
Mm-hmm.
which could be Kenworth photography.
It could be anything. Yeah, it could
So
be helping
you're-
people. Yeah.
I think that So you're
And the machine is doing work, right? It's
okay. So what is the machine doing when it's running?
guessing numbers.
Guessing numbers. Okay.
It's guessing numbers
And it's guessing numbers for what reason?
to secure the network.
To secure the network.
Because the more machines that are on the network, the more secure the Bitcoin network is.
Okay.
Because the more work would need to be done to undo that block, right? If only 10 machines are plugged in, it's very easy to plug 11 machines in and undo that work.
Okay.
To
So basically, the mining machines are kind of like an auditing system.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And the nodes work together. They work in conjunction.
So now the node, is that the mining machine?
That's the data. So that's where
That's the data. That's the ledger.
That's the ledger.
Just like you have your own personal ledger.
You have your own personal
So
ledger.
you're saying for it to be off, you've got a ledger from the beginning of time, from
Mhm.
Bitcoin
Mhm.
started, and everybody's got their own piece of that ledger.
Yeah.
And the mining machine is guessing numbers just so that it can.
Try to find the next block.
Okay.
The next available space to put all the transactions in. And it can only put valid ones in.
Okay.
And so the reason
Why is
that it can only put valid ones in because that's the rules that are agreed upon.
Okay.
In order for someone to put a non-valid transaction in, they would have to have more machines than are available in the world.
Okay. Okay.
So it's using a system, again, it's using a system. The whole idea here is to use a system that is not predicated on theft.
I gotcha. So this is all this stuff you're talking about. You buy the Bitcoin, right?
You can buy the Bitcoin, yeah.
You buy the Bitcoin, but all all that you're talking about is verification to make sure that nobody's stealing from it.
Nobody's stealing from anybody.
So it's a absolute secure currency.
It is.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Versus the dollar, where we're gonna like you said, stimulate. We're gonna print more money,
Yep.
which nobody's worked for it, but we're gonna go ahead and print it because we can print as much as we want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And when you
See what
use
it
that system, you are essentially perpetuating it, right? You're making that system stronger.
You're making theft strong.
You're making theft stronger. Let me say it another way. When you swipe a credit card,
Yeah.
someone prints dollars and gives them to the merchant.
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So you can print dollars. You can. Because whenever you essentially, right, when you swipe that credit card,
Yeah.
the bank is printing up
Oh,
new
so,
money.
Yeah, you can print dollars. Yeah. So
The bank is printing up new money and
anytime
giving
you
it to the
use your
merchant.
credit card, you're printing new dollars.
You're printing new dollars,
So
exactly.
You're helping the system.
You're perpetuating the system of theft.
Yeah.
Because then you have to go get more dollars from someone else to pay that back.
Okay. Yeah.
Makes sense? You have to go get more dollars. If I swipe my
Maybe
card,
you had to go get a loan to pay off a credit card. So then you're printing more dollars.
Bingo.
From the bank.
bingo, and you're perpetuating it more.
So this is how the banks get richer.
And that's why the borrower is
because
always a
people
slave to
have
the
keep
lender.
Going to the banks, and
They have, yep.
half the time I don't think the banks really have the. What don't they? Do they have the money?
The reserves.
Yeah.
The reserves, no, they don't have the reserves.
Yeah.
There is in fact, get this, you ready? It goes a step further. If banks have extra reserves,
Yeah.
they can take those extra reserves and they can park them with the Federal Reserve and get paid for their reserves. But that's your money.
Yeah.
So the bank is getting paid for your deposits. Why wouldn't you get paid for your deposits, right? Okay, so I'm glad that it's kind of clicking for you a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm really glad.
following you.
I'm really glad.
If I take it so that if this is how my brain works, like so when we would do classes, that's why I like to ask questions
Yeah.
as I go because I like to verify if I'm on the right track.
Yep.
That's how I learn. So,
Now, one thing, a fair statement here, okay, is that maybe miners are just gambling. They're gambling their energy away
okay.
for a chance to win Bitcoin. How is that commendable or blessing God, right?
Now wait a minute. Okay, so now I'm lost again.
Because they're guessing numbers.
They're guessing numbers, but I thought it was just for a verification process.
If they-
not for
If they guess right, then they're rewarded for the right.
oh,
guess.
so with your mining thing that you work to buy
Mhm.
and you work to run it because
Mhm.
it costs money.
Because it costs money to run it, yep.
Okay, you guess number, or
Mhm.
it guesses numbers for you.
Mhm.
If you guess the right numbers, then would you get more Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, the more miners I have, the more of that reward I get,
okay.
right? So the incentive for me to run a bunch of these
Yeah.
is high because then I get a higher reward.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a fair question that people have
Okay.
come up with is
Yeah.
it commendable to work in this way if it's just gambling away energy? And again, we go back to it is securing a system of rules that allows for a reward system that is also agreed upon, right?
Okay.
Think about if you're a politician. Do you think your reward is higher than if you're not a politician?
Well, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So the agreed upon rules are not the same for politicians versus us. In Bitcoin, it brings that back to reality and says everyone has the same incentive. Everyone has the same rule set. And that allows the necessary work to keep everyone, right,
Yeah.
collectively ethical.
Okay.
That's the whole point here is to change the money change the money
So
system.
the more people that get into this, the more money that can be made.
The more people that get into this, the better our world can become because our money is not based on theft.
Okay.
Is not it takes theft away
Yeah.
from the system, right? So the value of Bitcoin is securing the network, which is all the people running nodes and using miners. It's collective, I told you that. And in Proverbs 27:12, it says, "The prudent sees danger and takes refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty." What are we going to do?
Yeah.
We're going to move forward. We're going to see the danger of using a system like we've been talking about,
Yeah.
and instead, we will move away and not have to pay that penalty.
Yeah.
So this can bring up a lot of fear, right? Typically, whenever people talk about Bitcoin, there's a really common word. It gets shortened as an acronym called FUD, F-U-D, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So all those things can start to come up. Well, what if the internet goes out? What if the electricity grid goes out? What if, and the Bible says, fear not man, fear the Lord your God. So when we start to think about this, we have to take that with a grain of salt and remember that if he cares for the birds, he's going to care for us. And if we're using a system that's not based on theft, right, that he will bless that.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question real quick?
For sure.
Not to get you
No,
off
you're
topic.
good. You're good.
So if you, this is where I get a little puzzled too. If you were to purchase Bitcoin,
Mm-hmm.
how do I go into a coffee shop and order a cup of coffee with Bitcoin?
Well, they have to take it.
Oh, okay, so not all places take it.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this is why I'm doing kind of this talk. It's
To
important
get it to more places.
to get it to
accept
flourish. Yeah, to get it to flourish. Because if more people accept it, I can accurately say, oh, this place I'm going to go to because they're using a system that doesn't have theft involved, and this system does.
Okay.
And so,
Do you do it like, how does that work then?
So,
Like,
so-
so if you got a place, a coffee shop that does accept it, you walk in there and what do you do?
I
Do something
take
with your
my
phone?
big if to be able to move it to them,
Yeah.
scan a QR code.
Okay, so
It's a
they
Q-
scan
it's a-
your QR code?
I scan their QR code and I can send them Bitcoin
Oh, and you send them Bitcoin.
Mhm.
Okay.
in order for me to pay for a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Or if someone was to pay me with for my photography services with
Yeah,
Bitcoin,
Bitcoin.
I would send them a QR code and they would scan it.
And then
and
send you the amount
Yep,
in Bitcoin.
in Bitcoin. That's right. And we would have an agreed upon amount,
Yeah.
right? Just the same way we'd agree upon dollar amounts.
So now when you, okay, so if you were doing a job photography,
Mm-hmm.
okay, would you tell, if you wanted paid in Bitcoin, would you say, that'll be $300 and then does it, you put 300 in and it, you know what I mean?
If I do, does the conversion.
Conversion,
Yeah.
it does it for you.
So typically whenever I ask someone if they want to pay in Bitcoin, I would give them a 21% discount immediately right off the bat. I say, if you pay in Bitcoin, I'll give you a 21%
Why is
discount
that?
because I want to incentivize them to do so.
Okay,
I want to incentivize them to pay in Bitcoin.
okay,
That's just a benefit that I can do,
Okay.
right, as a business owner. And so if they choose to do that, I would then come up with the currency conversion on my own and decide, okay, it's X amount of dollars minus the discount is this much here. And I would move them from one system to another and receive their money on that system,
okay.
right? Instead
Why
of,
would you have to convert it?
why would I, so because I just do that with a calculator. I
Okay,
just do that with a calculator, and because the price of Bitcoin is changing all the time,
okay,
right? So if someone said, hey, I'll pay you $300 for a photo shoot, and then I say, okay, it's this much Bitcoin, and then they don't pay for a week, the price could change. The price could change of Bitcoin,
Okay.
which means that the value of it would change. So I would need a little bit more, a little bit less,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Of the Bitcoin, because again, the only thing that's changing is the ruler.
okay,
Okay? That's the only thing that's changing. One Bitcoin is always one Bitcoin. The only thing that's changing is the ruler,
meaning the value.
meaning the value of the dollar,
Yeah.
how far the dollar can go,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's the important thing to remember. The reason
Doesn't
it changes.
do with Bitcoin though too, if it fluctuates with the market, you know?
So again, it's important to look at it from one perspective.
Okay,
There's only 21 million Bitcoin.
okay,
There's infinite dollars
yeah,
on the other system.
yeah,
If there's only 21 million Bitcoin, the value of it is not changing. The value of that is changing.
okay.
Make sense?
Mhm.
So the value of the Bitcoin does not change. What you price it in is changing. One Bitcoin's always one Bitcoin. That's the way the system functions. And so it's hard for us to think that way because we're not used to a finite asset, to a scarce, fixed supply. And so when we fix ourselves in that supply and we look at the dollar system, we can see it going, oh, you're printing, oh, you're not printing, oh, you're printing, oh, you're not printing, oh, you're printing.
Let me ask you this. This would lead to another question. What if down the road everything was moved to Bitcoin, but since there's a scarce amount and only a certain amount, What if we run out of Bitcoin?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
So, or what if governments get control of the majority of the Bitcoin, right? Here's a picture of the ownership type. Okay, so this is based on 100%. Okay, so if you added all these up, it would complete the circle, is what it would do. This right here is just only 21 million. 14.6 million is owned by individuals like you and me.
Okay.
So that's 70% of the supply is owned by individuals. 7.5% is estimated to be lost. Lost Bitcoin. Either they lost their keys or they forgot their wallet somewhere. And the other ones are...
Question.
Yeah.
How is it lost if it's digital?
How is it lost?
Yeah.
That's actually the next piece that we were going to get into.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the very next one. That's good. No, it's good questions because you're on the train of thought. But what this is showing is that the amount of Bitcoin that is out there, right, is all that will ever be out there. Yeah. And so with that being fact, right, you can see that governments can never own that much Bitcoin.
Yeah.
They can only own a certain small amount of it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that gets failed to mention in, actually, I think it comes up in the next topic, is that the amount of Bitcoin that is left to come out of miners will take 125 years.
Okay.
So miners will be continuing this operation of verifying the network.
So for the next 125 years, you can mine for Bitcoin.
For the next 125 years, you can mine for Bitcoin for a block reward. Mining will continue after the last reward has been sent out, but the idea is that then you would be in a fee market. It costs me a small fee. I pay a miner to confirm that my transaction's valid to you. I pay a miner that, right? That small fee. When I'm sending, if I was to send you Bitcoin over the network,
okay,
I pay a small fee, right? And then whoever finds that block, when my transaction goes in that block, they get that fee. And right now that fee is like, it's
blocks. Go back to the blocks.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are the blocks? The blocks are
so the blocks are where the transactions live, right? It's the ledger. It's that ledger. Every single time there's a new entry on that ledger, it's a new block.
Okay.
And inside that block, there are transactions.
So you have a block, everybody has a block.
We have copies of the ledger. And so every time there's a block added, your transaction is confirmed or denied in that block.
Big ledger. So picture it, a big ledger from the beginning of Bitcoin.
Yep.
And you all own the part that pertains to you.
You all own the entire copy.
You own the entire copy of the ledger.
Yep.
So it's like you could do a non-stop audit.
You can do a non-stop audit, exactly, from the beginning of time.
Okay.
And so when we think about that fear of technology, which you're getting into a lot of questions that can bring up kind of those like, well, wait, God gave us dominion over the earth and over creation. That's a mandate.
Yeah.
When we think constructively about money rather than fear it, because we trust God, right? We can start to eliminate a lot of those fears and just base it on what He wants for our life. Rather than fear, us as Christians have the freedom to move forward into a productive world, have a better future for next generations, rather than move backwards. You wouldn't want to have no cars. You wouldn't want to have no electricity or no internet. These things have been used to advance mankind, but advance God's word. Think about live streams on a Sunday, right? They've reached millions of people, and you wouldn't want to move backwards in that at all. So if we were scared of cars, we would just want to use horse and buggy forever.
Yeah.
And we would be scared of cars forever, right?
Just because we're scared of it.
Just because we're scared. And as they go faster and faster and faster, we would just get more scared of them, right? But we're not now. We want faster cars, right?
Yeah.
Think about it with electricity. We only saw those in the form of a lightning bolt for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Why would anyone say they want to harness the power of a lightning bolt? But we do in our phones. We carry it in our pocket,
Yeah. Well,
So-
it seems like the more knowledge does away with a lot of that fear.
So yeah, again, Proverbs 23:23 says, buy truth, knowledge, and understanding, and do not sell it, right? the auditability is not only able to be done on the ledger, but on the underlying code that all the computers are running. It's an open source code that you can audit if you would like to. And as they say, open source wins every time, because if it's free and open source, it can't compete. I mean, look at MySpace. You know what I mean? Like, look at Facebook. As soon as you start to introduce paid things in your platform, they're just going to go to the free one. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. So, seeing the hand of God in Bitcoin. If God can use anything for His glory and for our benefit, then we can hold strong to the belief that God can use Bitcoin to spread His glory, right?
Yeah.
And I think about that time whenever, I don't know if you know the story, whenever Jesus walked into the temple and He saw the money changers and they were selling doves, right? And I think about this, what would that look like today? It would look like this.
Oh, yeah.
The whip is Bitcoin, okay?
Yeah.
He's using Bitcoin to drive out Wells Fargo and Chase Bank and Goldman Sachs, right?
Yeah.
There's Citibank in there. So that's just an idea, of what God can do. And this is episode 4. We are just about finished. Outlawing Bitcoin is not possible at all, because in order to shut it down, you would need to shut down the entire power grid or the entire internet that we have, internet grid, which is why we're using Bitcoin, is to keep the internet going, keep things moving. There's also been some attacks on Bitcoin. You can read about the history of it, called the block size wars. And it's basically where each block is a certain amount of space. Only so many transactions can fit in a block.
Yeah.
And so there was a guy that came, he went by the name Bitcoin Jesus. And he wanted to change the size of the block, say, let's make him huge. So everybody can fit their transactions in. And that would make it really hard to run a node, because you'd have to have a massive computer. Well, it didn't work. The network fended that off and kept it secure. When you store Bitcoin, the way that you do that is through 12 words. Just 12 simple words, and not random words. It's a set list of words that are in a specific order create a Bitcoin wallet. When you create that wallet, that is your password, essentially, to moving the Bitcoin. So whenever I want to move Bitcoin from, my own custody to yours, I would essentially sign in that ledger with my 12 words that this is Logan signing. It doesn't have my name on it. It's pseudonymous, right? But it essentially is stating that. And no one can see those 12 words when I sign it, because it's my own unique signature, but it's backed by a secure method of operation.
Okay.
So it's just the last thing I wanted to say to this one is that if you can't move Bitcoin from one app to another or from one place to another, it was never your Bitcoin to begin with.
Okay.
Because that's the entire premise of it, is that we can freely move, not just from one system to another, but freely move Bitcoin in anywhere we want.
Okay.
And so that's pretty much the end of the talk.
Okay.
As far as what I had for that.
Okay.
There was a couple questions and stuff on here, but ultimately it's just more like faith-based. If you had any technical questions, totally open to those or whatnot.
Yeah.
But we only have about 20 minutes left, which is kind of my game plan of where I wanted to land.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of the first week.
Well,
so,
I mean, as we went on, I've learned a little more and more. I mean, I know a good bit more than I knew last time.
Yep.
And like I said, when you're talking, what you just said, I noticed kind of a theme. The more you know, the less scared you are.
Exactly.
So, knowledge is power. So the more you learn, like when you talk about Bitcoin, I'm thinking, when you talk about mining before, I'm like, what's that mean? You know? So as time goes on, learn a little more and more, and then you're a little less skeptical or scared or whatever. So yeah, so definitely learned a lot.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I had a couple other pictures to show you, if that's
Sure.
cool.
Yeah.
Here's this one here, which shows, this is Genesis 47. It shows slaves owned by Pharaoh were required to pay him a 20% of their income. and this is today in 2024, the median taxpayer pays 24% income tax along with 7.5% FICA tax on his, and then also has a sales tax, a property tax, a gas tax, a ton of other.
So they're crazy.
This is worse than Pharaoh. Okay, that's the type of rule that we're under here.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
So do you think some of Trump's ideas? I mean, and I know like we don't want to put things in the hand of the government, but do you think it looks better than what it has? You know what I mean, with the
dollar
tariffs and some of these things, some of the other stuff.
No. Here's the other picture we have right here, which shows the value of the dollar.
Okay.
Right. So we said it. If the value of $100, which is silver dollars at that point, right?
Yeah.
Here is whenever the Federal Reserve was created. This is the Wall Street crash, the Bretton Woods Agreement, which took us off that standard, the oil crisis, the second oil crisis, and here all the way down here, the Trump tax cuts. All right. So we have tried everything to save this dollar.
Yeah.
And the idea here is to move away from that system.
And it really can't be saved because, like you said, it enables people to steal from it.
It enables people. Yes. The incentive is theft. The incentive is theft.
Yeah.
So, I had another one here to show you, which is Bitcoin sounds like it's just one idea, like it's just bingo. Somebody had an idea and came up with it. But this was actually over the course of about 40 years. You can see from the start of when some of the first ideas of computer technology and money in this way, e-gold being one of them, which predates, I'm not sure where it's here on the list, e-gold was another kind of like pre-Bitcoin money that was used on the internet.
So the idea's been going on for 40 years.
This idea has been building on itself for 40 years.
And then
Satoshi was the first one. Was
based
really
off the data and information that was already.
He was able to just pull all these pieces together
and then make Bitcoin.
And make Bitcoin in the way that allows it to function how it is, how it was in 2009 and how it still is today, because nothing's changed in between that time. So
makes sense. Yeah.
That was pretty much, I think that's everything I had. I had a funny one here, which was a church meme, which it's Jesus on the Mount, and he says, help your neighbor and take care of the poor and hungry. And the guy in the crowd says, you mean give the money to the Romans and let them do it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to start over. Let me know where I lost you. So it's just showing that idea that we think with our taxes, we give our money to the, and then they're going to go, it doesn't necessarily work.
Yeah. Because you're getting away from letting the government take care of, and I can see that.
Exactly.
I see what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. And it decentralizes it, which allows me to use Bitcoin in the way that God's told me to.
Yeah.
Someone else is going to use Bitcoin to do something scammy, or something horrible.
Yeah.
But that's their choice to use the money in the evil way, right? The same way it was Judas's choice to sell Jesus. Like, it was, but it's part of the plan. Right? It was part of God's plan for Jesus to be sold.
Yeah.
And, it says that a demon entered Judas before he even did that. So, I just pray that, that we're able to shift the mindset, because to go back to the price a little bit, we'll talk more about like how price occurs like next time, but it's not that the value of Bitcoin is going up. It's that the value of dollars is going down. It buys us less and less and less and less.
So when the dollar goes down, does the value of Bitcoin go up?
The value of a lot of stuff goes up, because whenever they print it, the value of the dollar is going down when the price of the house goes up.
Yeah.
The value of the dollar is going down when the price of eggs goes up. You know what I mean? Like if the dollar buys you less than it did, like think about this with eggs, because they're so high right now.
Not to interrupt. Okay,
Please.
That goes back to or I can't remember which one, but so basically the dollar's going down because the value's going down because there's more. So when there's less, there's more scarcity, which brings more value,
Which also because of the nature of a Federal Reserve, it pushes interest rates higher. People demand more dollars on their investments, which is an interest rate, right? It pushes interest rates higher, which makes houses unaffordable. Right now they're at 7%. For a 30-year fixed loan, it's like 7.5%. Highest it's been in like 20 years.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
that's
it's insanity.
Yeah.
It's insanity.
Yeah.
But that's because there are less dollars in the system.
Yeah.
So I was just talking to someone about this earlier today, that eventually it becomes too hard for these governments to pay their debts. So they have to print it. That's the only tool they have in the book.
Yeah. And
In fact, I had a picture.
I always thought that was weird too, because when you think about the Federal Reserve, it's like, so they get to decide like how much money is, made. Like you said, you just keep going further and further in debt if you just keep printing it because you don't have it.
Because you don't have it. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, it's like, it's kind of like trying to figure out like how God doesn't have a beginning. You can't wrap your head around. I can't wrap my head around how.
Right.
How do you know when to stop? You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I get you.
It's
I get you.
weird.
I'm gonna hit stop on this. Hopefully it's still going.